picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. It is, it's unofficially the fourth week on the Enterprise build because I really only have just a little bit of housekeeping to do and it'll be done. I got a flat coat on it this weekend. It looks 100 times better than it did when it was all glossy. I've got a few tiny details to do. I've got to get these nacelle caps glued on. Now that I've gotten the flat coat on this, I can go ahead and glue these nacelle caps down. I didn't want them to get flat coated. I like the glossy look of those. And there's a couple touchies here and there of touchy paints, and one or two little, I'm sorry, keep it in camera. One or two little seams to deal with, but by and large it is done. And I'm working on the template set for it now and realized that I didn't have all the source pictures that I needed because I was so busy building it that I forgot to take pictures while I was doing it. So I'm going to quickly, I have asked Steve to send me another kit so that I can quickly just repaint the saucer. And I've got the information for the secondary. I got the pictures taken of that, but I need to paint up a new saucer. I won't light that or do anything fancy with it. I probably won't even end up gluing it together, but that's kind of what I'm working on this week, is getting the template set done. I think that those colors came out just fine now, and one of the things you realize when you start dealing with the Enterprise C is the Enterprise C is not the Yamaguchi. That was a different model. There were two different models. There was a model made for yesterday's Enterprise that was the Enterprise, and that model was sold. There was a second model that was made of the Yamaguchi, and that model was also sold. The one that was named for the Yamaguchi also, I think, was used as another kit or as another ship throughout the course of production of Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. But that kit is a separate thing because the C had all the battle damage on it, and the Yamaguchi had a lot of different details. The top deck here was different. There were phasers or additional transporter pads back here. The configuration of the lifeboats was different. Very, very similar. Of course, the most notable difference was the front of the nacelle caps. Those were very different on the Yamaguchi. Also, a lot of the online references are varied and different in their own details. So always best to find a filming model when you can. Okay, I've got the starry drop cloth out, and you know what that means. That means we are finished, and I am trying to make some nicey nice pictures. I don't want to unfold the whole thing because that just takes up a lot of space, but I wanted to, let's make sure that it is back on its post. Wanted to show off the Ambassador class Enterprise to its best advantage. Let me plug in the base, the full package there. You know, it was pointed out to me that the Enterprise C had a blue impulse light instead of this, and that was my mistake. I'm just too used to seeing an amber impulse engine, so I didn't think to check, and that's my mistake. But in all subsequent versions, whether it was the Yamaguchi or whatever, that was changed. So I feel somewhat justified. Not all of the illustrated references on file or online showed that also being red or amber. So again, I am not sweating it. Okay, pick up the camera. There we go. Now we can see a good view of it. I apologize for the shakiness, but I've got these guys trimmed down. There you go. You can see the green light there. Red light over there. Strobe up front. Strobe behind the bridge. I think this is the first model in a long time that I've done that all the lights have survived until the final reveal. So I'm happy about that. And of course the deflector dish underneath and the secondary or the lower saucer light there. No windows, not gonna do it. Too small. But there you go. There's your beauty shot. Or perhaps that's more likely to be the beauty shot of this particular ship. And we can happily say that this one is done now, and we can get on to this week's build. Well, welcome back. It's Monday afternoon, and we are diving headfirst into this week's build. Some people ask me to build more vehicles. Some people ask me to build more creatures. So I picked a kit that's got a little of both. It's a dessert topping. It's a floor wax. It's a dessert topping. No, it's a creature build with a vehicle in front. It is the Cyclops and Chariot, new release from Doll and Hobby, and formerly, I guess, well, I don't know. I guess it was a Polar Lights kit. I'm not sure. But this one comes to us from Doll and Hobby. And it's a weird little kit. It's an oddity. Some of it is a relic of its time, and some of it is, let's see how we can make this thing better. I'm assuming at one point it started life as simply a kit of the Cyclops, because here we have what was the base, and it's basically the Cyclops, which is a testament to simple building. It's two pieces, and then each arm is two pieces, and the feet go on. And it sat on a base like this, and I'm believing that's probably the first kit. And then it was added to. In a way to make this funky base. And let me see if I can re-aim the camera. There we go. It's got this funky added base, which added a layer of rocks that you still sat this weird thing on top of it because there's nothing going on underneath. This was never finished, so something needs to be done there to finish off that rock, just for my own sake of mind. And then you had the Cyclops standing on top of it. I'm just going to plop these feet in place, and gravity is not going to let me put all of these pieces together, but it's sat something like this. And then below it you had a chariot, which is a neat effort. I'm going to assume, trying to remember from watching the pilot episode, that when they showed the fallen Cyclops and he's laying on the ground like this, and then they had the chariot going up next to it, that seems to be about right as far as the scale of the chariot to the Cyclops. But here's where things get weird. They also has all of the Robinson people. And no, first of all, let's talk about this chariot. There are some wildly inaccurate things about this chariot, and we know these because we've built the chariot, the Mobius chariot, that is, perfect in every detail. And these details are off. There's just some weird things about it. So put that to the side. Then you've got the people, the Robinsons, that go with this kit. And they're yet another scale, because ain't no way in God's green earth, as sure as God made the little green apples, those figures don't fit inside that chariot. So you go with the idea that, okay, it's forced perspective. You're sitting out here with the people. Chariot's in the background. The Cyclops is even more in the background. And this is how that kit existed for many years. Well, Doll and Hobby, when they decided to bring this kit back out, they decided to add the two missing figures. Well, for some odd reason, and I don't know why. Maybe I'm sure it all comes down to money. When it was the second time around, when this was released with the figures, it was released with all of them, with the exception of Smith, Judy, and the robot, which was kind of more in keeping with the original No Place to Hide pilot, because the robot and Smith didn't exist in that iteration. But they were still missing Judy. You had all the other ones. I mean, frankly, no offense, Angela, but I'd have left Penny out. I'd have kept Judy. So, Doll and Hobby, they want to reintroduce this kit. They add a separate pack featuring new sculpts of Smith and Judy. Still no robot, but that's okay. The robot is handled in the very unique decals that go on this kit. So we're going to build this up. Not going to try to do any fancy lighting. I am going to be making some templates for the windows of the Chariot, because even though these are solid, it still would help to have a white decal around, or white area around here to put the decal over. That way you still get your silver pinstriping and everything's good there, but then you have a nice white surface to put the supplied decals in. There's also some scratch boating that just needs to be done, because like there's no solid bottom for the bottom of this Chariot, and while it's not structurally needed, it just feels odd without it. So this is the current state of this kit, is the Doll and Hobby version. But we're also going to be adding Paul's Photo-Etch to it. The paragraphic Photo-Etch that recreates the luggage rack for the Chariot. And Paul has as much as said that, hey, we all know, we're not kidding anybody, we all know that this kit is wildly inaccurate. But rather than trying to start from scratch and fix everything, we're just going to fix a few things. He calls it, very, very diplomatically, he calls it the charm of the kit. And I have to agree, there's a certain amount of charm that this kit deals with. But as far as, down to the nuts and bolts accurate, that's not what we're shooting for here. Good morning, welcome back to Camp Cyclops. Taking the tape and the clamps off of yesterday's gluing and starting to do all of the sanding. And I gotta tell you, I need to get the riding belt sander out, because these seams, particularly on Fluffy here, are the worst I have seen in quite a while. Now, yes, this is a repop of an old kit, and there is such a thing as being too devoted to the old kit. The old kit sucked, from what I'm gathering. If this is what the old kit was. But it can be fixed. It's no big deal. But I'm spoiled. I'm used to kits that were designed and molded in the last century. And that is from 2000 to 2020 now, the last century. So when you get something that looks like it was originally molded in the 60s and has been repopped, you're going to run into these quality differences. I can look at the stuff that was done for the new kit, for the new version, and it already looks a whole lot better than this. But this is a repop of the original kit, so it's going to have the original kit's flaws in it. Now, granted, the costume for the Cyclops, I mean, the big, I don't know if it was done with carpet samples or what, but it was not what I would call a costume with a lot of finesse to it. And recreating those details here, you get a model that does not have a lot of finesse to it. I say all that to say this. You're going to do a lot of sanding to get these seams cleaned up. There are some nasty, nasty seams on here, and some gaps where parts don't fit very well. That's, I guess, the nature of this particular beast. And here he is signaling a touchdown. Yay, touchdown. He does not have his boulder in his hand. And it got me to thinking, between this guy and throwing rocks at the Chariot, and the Gorn throwing rocks at Captain Kirk, it was a if the 60s were a bad time to be a hero because you were going to have rocks thrown at you. That seemed to be the weapon of choice. And today, well, you can see again, this base done later is molded better. The seams are tighter. It still needs to have the putty fill in where the gap is, but it fits better. I am working on some of the other revisions. I have scraped the Lost in Space raised lettering off of this, what used to be the old stand for the Cyclops when it was its own kit. I scraped the lettering off of there. I have not quite decided whether to use Paul's new Photo-Etch there or just to paint it up as rock and not put the name on it. I've cleaned up this seam here. This seam took a lot of sanding. Luckily, it's a rock. It can, you know, there's no detail you're not going to worry about losing. You can always throw some detail back in with putty or textured paint, which I plan on using the textured paint on that. When it comes to the Chariot, remember whether I mentioned it yesterday or not, there's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza. There's a hole in the bottom. Yes, this is where the front panel goes in that covers up the the front of it, and there's one on the back, but there's a big old gaposis going on in the bottom. So I just cut a little piece of plain old sheet stock, and this is really for my own benefit. This is not one time, by the time you sit it down on the base, you're never going to see it, but this is for my own sanity, just to know that there's there. And it also increases the stability, since you've only got these 2 points, front and back, really at the bottom, to touch these things together. So putting a panel in there, it just covers up that big gap. And I may put yet another one here to show the drive well of the Snowcat, which the Chariot was made out of. But again, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheels here, because it's gonna, the way it sits is never going to, you're never going to see them, that gap. It's, like I said, for my own stability. Had toyed with the idea ever so quickly and then dismissed it, of putting, of lighting the headlights. Headlights go right here. It would be a neat little trick to have, come on, let me put them together. It would be a neat little trick to have these 2 lights lit, but, that's like gilding the lily here. It is too little too late on this kit to have a light there. So we'll just go without it. There are some details here that I need to sand off in order to use Paul's etch. These bumpers need to come off, but I think it's going to be easier to do that once everything is glued together, and it gives me more stable base to sand against. Like these bumpers front and back come off because Paul has got his rubber baby buggy bumpers are right here, so we could take those off. And there's he's beefed up the detail for the big dish that goes on the front and for the luggage rack. So there'll be some detailing added to it, but I don't think that it would miss having lights on it if I were to decide not to do that. Okay, just putting the Chariot together, such as it is. Also a fine example of really horrible seams. But because, it's horrible seam right down the top, but because you've got the bubble going on here and then you've got the roof rack going on there, it's going to cover up most of those seams. Where the ugliness comes in is around these front and back windows here, around these panels. Those are not very clean or conducive to looking good seams. So it's going to take some painting and some touching up and some filling and some, probably put a little bead of tulip in there to kind of close that gap. Here you can see I put in the solid bottom here. Just a little piece there for my own peace of mind. And now I'm going to put a second one in that goes just a little higher than that. Just a little strip that goes in there that touches the front and the back of the drivetrain assembly and just closes that in. And that's really so that when you're looking at it from underneath, you don't see up and underneath. You're gonna see into the behind of the or the back side of the where the axles would be, I guess. But this kit is not going to make any sort of pretense as to giving you those details. So I'm just doing something that will cover up the sight lines. Okay, the last big gap that needs filled is this area up under the original stand for the Cyclops and the new outcropping of rock. And basically all I'm going to do is just put a thin piece of sheet styrene up underneath here, and then where it makes a gap, I'm just going to putty that. It's again, it's rock. It's not got the highest tolerances of, you know, really, what am I trying to say? It doesn't have to be exact. It's rock. It's organic. You can sculpt around it. It's not like it's the side of a person's face or a flat sheet of hull panel on the side of a starship or something. It's, pardon the noise, but I wanted to show you this before I threw some paint on it. Basically got the three parts of the rock put together. Got that little gap under there fixed. And now I'm just going to, and I've got the putty on it, that's dried and I've sanded it. And now I'm just going to throw some filler primer on it. Okay, we're continuing work on the wee Chariot and the Cyclops. Now I've got the background mesas and rocks and all of that. That's drying in the other room. I've put some texture paint on that, and I'm turning my attentions now to the Chariot itself. And like I said, this is the Mobius Chariot that I made a while ago, at least a few years ago now, and I'm using that as my guide for this one, and seeing that it's coming up way lacking. Some of the gaps between the front panel and the sides and the back panel and the sides, I've taken to putting some tiny rod. This is the .035 rod from Evergreen, and just to fill in that gap and kind of bring out the framework. And I'm debating how much more of that I want to put on, because it is kind of nice, and I'm thinking I might want to put it at least down the sides here of the major well, it's tough to make everything kind of line up because they don't. So you're gonna have to make some fake jogs and whatnots to make everything line up. So I was wondering if I could get away with putting a strip on the side and then carrying it around to the front. The nice thing about this is it's so thin that it does bend very easily. It does take curves very easily. So that's what I'm thinking. Okay, I think I'm ready to put the primer on the Chariot. I've got a little bead that I put around the bottom tub edge, and it goes up around both the windshield and the back window. I didn't want to try to recreate all of that, because I think that would be overkill and lead to madness. So morning, welcome back. It is Wednesday now, and we're gonna I think we're gonna get a lot done today. I just had that feeling in my bones. This kit is going along nicely. Now, the nice thing about this kit is if you get bored with painting rocks, you can paint on a Cyclops. If you get bored with a Cyclops for while it's drying, you can go off and paint the figures, or you can paint on the Chariot. There's a little bit of everything for everybody. If you're a vehicle guy, you work on the Chariot. If you're a naturalist, you can work on the rocks. If you're a creature guy, you can work on the Cyclops, and so on and so on. So where we're going to be at today is I'm going to start digging into my references. Now, on the, believe it or not, on the Season 1 box set, the Blu-ray box set of the new Netflix Lost in Space series, which you should give a try. It might surprise you. There is a colorized version of No Place to Hide, which is the unaired pilot for the original Lost in Space series. And that is where we see the Cyclops. Actually, there's two different places. If you know the story of Lost in Space, you know that the original pilot, called No Place to Hide, was kind of rejected. They said go back and do something, go back and tweak the formula, and that's where they brought in Smith and the robot. And then they, because Irwin Allen will not leave a dollar on the table, re-edited elements of the original season, the original pilot, into the first 5 episodes of the first season. So that's why they explain they put Smith in cryostasis for that bit of the story. But I'm going to go pull out that disc, that Blu-ray, and check out my references, because, you know, this can have a tendency to get muddy if you aren't careful, because you've got basically brown ground. You know, the ground is brown. The ground is brown. The rocks are brown. The Cyclops is orange brown. I mean, there's a lot of similarity going on, which I guess they weren't all that worried about, since it was, you know, filmed in black and white anyway. But you want, or not filmed in black and white, it was aired in black and white. Now, okay, here's probably, well, this is a scene from the Blu-ray colorized version, and you can see the 3 colors that we're dealing with. The Cyclops himself is very much into the orange brown spectrum, whereas the rocks around him are into the yellow-brown spectrum, and he's got this wonderful big baby blue eye, and his beard and hair is very much black, or at least a dark brown. But you could cheat that into the black spectrum. Trying to hold the camera still here. I don't want to. There you go. I don't want to get too much into showing clips. I don't want to run into anybody's copyright law. But here you can see the nails are a little bit. They're not as differently colored as, you know, maybe his teeth are white, but or whitish, but they're not a bright colored nail like sometimes you'll see reptiles done with or monsters done with almost a ivory colored nail. Let's see if we. Okay, I bring this up because it's fun, but watch the little dummies in the back of the prop. This is, I believe, the radio-controlled chariot, or maybe it was even pulled along. I'm not sure, but watch the little dummies of Penny and Judy bounce along here. Yeah, it's rough time. Here you can see where they show the feet being a different color. They're more of a grayish, almost into the black, but the feet are a different color than where the hair starts right at the ankle. Big old blue eye. Okay, here you can get an idea of the topography and the color of the sand and everything. This is a little bit more tan, a little bit more yellowish than, it may not be showing up that way on camera, but me looking at the screen it is. A little bit more yellowish than the dark browns and the oranges of the Cyclops himself. So I think we've got enough color references. I know one thing I want to determine, that there is no typical gray rock going on here. Everything is a sandstone color, or it is a brown. It's either a beige or a brown or a yellow. It's not what you would call, you know, gray granite rock colors. The only grays that are in it really are the chariot. Okay, this is from the first appearance of the Cyclops, and you can see the contrast here between the rocks and the Cyclops and his coloration. Now, I understand what you're going to say, Lou. You're depending on somebody else's artistic interpretation, and in this case, I'm going to say, yeah, I am. Consistency is the hobgoblin of tiny minds. Okay, we're back on the table. Now that we know more about our friend here, we can get on with the painting. And here we have Robinson's on a stick. Interesting bit to go back and watch that bit of video, and you realize, hey, you know, they were in their civvies. They were not in the tinfoil spacesuits like the kid has. The kid has them in the tinfoil spacesuits when they were in their multicolored parkas, and back when Penny was even wearing that paisley yellow parka. And if you've ever tried to paint that paisley yellow parka, you'll know what a pain that was to paint the paisley parka. But here we go. We've got all of our parts. We've got all of our Robinsons, and they're in the tinfoil suits, which is going to make them easy to paint because you get the chrome paint out one time, and then you go in and do the red pinstriping, and you're home. But it's just an odd choice for them to have been sculpted in that way. Now, Smith, even though he was not in the pilot episode that this was taken from, has been represented in the kit in his drabs, I guess. It's not the it's the suit and tie he wore in the first 5 episodes, or the first week's episodes. And that's going to be fun to paint because it will stand out from the other tinfoil suits. But like I said, if you're a figure painter, you can go nuts painting figures. But right now, I want to get some paint on this guy because he's kind of determined. The Chariot colors we know. We know the Chariot colors. We know the tinfoil Robinson colors. What we don't know, and what we don't have a good basis for, is this guy and the rocks. So what I want to do is get him painted the way I want, and that will help me determine how yellow I need to paint these, so that they will be nice and contrasty. All right, we're going to start painting the Cyclops now, and what I want to do is start with a darker base that I can do some dry brushing on top of and some highlighting on top of. So we're going to start with the Mecha Dark Rust Wash. And there's possible we might do a wash over top of it after it's done. Sometimes I'll go back and forth between washes and highlights. I'll get a good base color on there, and then I might decide that I need to have more of a wash over a certain part or more of a highlight, and I'll go back and forth several times. So I don't think I have ever put on a coat of paint and said, ooh, this is perfect. This is the final color. This is what I'm going to use. I always end up changing it somehow or going over it or adapting it. I'm just getting a good foundation coat on here, and that'll show me where I need to do more work. I think the shoulder joints might need to be dressed up a little bit. And I'm going to go on like this for a few minutes, so I don't need to drag you along. And hopefully now you can see, I'm starting to lay down some of the base colors, and yeah, it looks a little Flintstone-y at this point. Not my intention, but I wanted to get get the main color differences in, and then everything else can get built from here. I am doing trying to do the orange and then the yellows, and then I can work my shading and my highlights around that. Try to get the big color differences in, and there you go. So it's kind of like that. So, and there he goes. You can see how the danger of this kid is that he is very front heavy. You've got to get him glued down, and he doesn't even have the big styrofoam boulder in his hand yet. But you can see the inherent problem with the kid about him being top heavy. Okay, I've been working off and on most of the day, circling around the various aspects of this build, working a little bit on the people, and then move over to the Chariot, excuse me, then over to the Cyclops, and back to the people. And I've got the Chariot, this is what I want to talk about now. I've got this to a point where I'm ready to let it dry overnight. And essentially what I've got is this. You can see the treads are still taped off. But I've got, it's a good compromise, I think, because this area that you see in white is the only area that is covered by the decals that come with the kit. And that will give you the illusion of the interior and the seats and the curtains and all of that. Since you're never going to be able to make an interior for this or carve any of that open. But also, there are clear bits here that if you were to make this absolutely correct, these would also be decals that would, be a top view. So, but they didn't do that. So what I'm going to do, which I think is a compromise, is I've painted the top of this what they call an oiled silver, and this is an oiled silver. It's like a gunmetal. It's darker than regular chrome. And the areas that you see in white, we will be covering with decals. But the areas that you see here in this dark silver, I'm still going to cover them, because what I want to do is go in and spray a brighter silver over top of this that will give me the framework of all of the windows. And so the goal is, and that'll be in the morning, I'm going to let this dry overnight, is to let this dark silver and the white dry overnight, come back and decal it, or I'm sorry, mask it in the morning, and then spray a chrome frame over it. Then I could put like the Photo-Etch bumpers and the Photo-Etch ladder steps and all of that kind of stuff on it after it's been decaled. Okay, so you may not have seen, I've got working around on the figures. Smith has got one of the weirdest face sculpts I've ever seen. Looks like an owl. It's quite the caricature. But I've got him cowering like something like that. The area that I think I am closest to being done with are these rocks. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Now I do need to touch up the stone that Harry here will be tossing, but I'm happy with this part of it. Let's see, let me put the details back on. So that's going to go something like that. I'm happy with him. I need to give him a flat coat in the morning, and then I can work in some of these details. But I'm happy finally with the way the washes went into the creases. But I want to give him a flat coat in the morning, and then maybe a dry brushing of some of the highlights. But I want to. He's ready to rest the whole night, and some of the Robinsons are getting close to being done. Of course, I've got some skin work to do on them tomorrow, and then I've got to go in and paint the red detailing on all of the spacesuits, all of the baked potato suits. Back, it's Thursday. Work is speeding up on the Chariot / Cyclops / Robinsons kit. Got some things I came back to it this morning and went, you know what? I think I'm pretty much done with those rocks. I kind of like where they are. I'm happy with how it looks. I don't think I really need to spend too much more time on that. I'm kind of happy with this whole base. So I need to glue this down. I might want to sand the bottom of that to get it a little bit more cleanly able to join up. But I'm quite happy with that. And also, now I cheated a little bit this morning and I painted in the eyeball. Hey, Mom! Hey! Hello! Woo! Gold! But no, I'm quite happy with. I would put a little bit of gloss over it. That's all I need to do right now is put a little clear gloss over his eyeball. So let me get the gloss varnish. Okay, get the gloss varnish out, and I'll put a little drop on my plastic topper here, and a tiny brush. Where's my tiny brush? There we go. And paint over that eyeball. Give a good gloss on his eye. Probably more care has been spent on this model of the Cyclops than ever was on the entire costume that this poor stuntman was wearing. It is a cheesy thing and does not stand up to, also putting some on his lips, does not stand up to high-def restoration. You really see the flaws in the suit when you watch it on high def. Okay, so I do notice that because I decided to build it this way, I cut the little key out of his paw that the rock keyed into the little nub. So sliding the rock in and out is not as easy as you might think. So I need to do some sanding on that to make it fit in there, because I don't want to overly stress the hands and wreck any of the fine work I've done as far as blending the shoulders in. One last thing I want to do to him is I want to take a German gray and just do a little bit of highlighting on his hair. Just a quick dry brush over the top of that to give it some body and dimension, like he had just had a nice Pantene shampoo. So let me do that and I'll come back to you. Yeah, I think I'm finished with the Cyclops. I just did a last pass on his toes, and it finally struck me who this guy reminds me of. I don't know the gentleman's name. I'll look it up. I'll maybe put a JPEG in after this, but it reminds me of the guy who always talks about aliens on History Channel. Says, I'm not saying it's aliens, but aliens. This is the guy. It's a long Greek name, I believe, but that's what this that's what this pose kind of reminds me of. So one last thing to do before I am willing to say the Cyclops is done is I want to sand the stone. I want a sandstone. I want to cut this rock down a little bit more so it fits more easily in his hands, and then I want to do some washing on it to bring out some of these details, maybe a little bit of highlighting, just to throw some life into it. Okay, I thought I would be a little conservative in my sanding, but then I decided no, I would be a little bolder. I'm sorry, it's a dad joke, I know, but I've got it sanded down to where it fits in his hands really nicely now. So I just need to repaint over these areas, get a little bolder. Little bolder. I'm sorry. Okay, I think we're willing to call this guy done. Anything I do now is simply gilding the lily, as it were, but he's ready to be perched upon the top of the rocks. And I am slowly winnowing parts down. I'm going to run out and get some lunch. When I come back, we're going to be templating putting the templates on the Chariot. Alrighty, I'm back from lunch and get ready to put the templates on, paint masks on this Chariot. It's threatening to snow outside. It's what I call hard rain. It's not quite cold enough for anything to stick, but it is starting to rain and the temperatures are going down. So everybody, of course, has gone nuts. They are looting the grocery stores for milk and eggs and bread. I guess this means it must be French toast season. Now, there are going to be a couple different types of masking templates in this kit. One to cover up where the decals go, these being the decals because you want a nice white backing behind the decals, and something to cover up these, not only the orange panel there, but also the darker metallic panels, so that I can spray this chrome or bright silver framework around everything. So let's get some down and see how well they go on. Okay, these are the these are the top panels. Now, it's true that if you use the stock luggage rack, you're not going to see a lot of what's going on under here, but I still wanted to have it painted anyway. I will be using, I have an obligation to show what this looks like with the stock on there, but if you're also using Paul's Photo-Etch, then you'll see much more of it, since it does, obviously is see-through, so you will see more of it by definition. Okay, I have finished putting the templates down. Now, the templates can work either way, but what I have just spent the last couple of minutes doing was folding up the Photo-Etch luggage rack that Paragraphics has made, and it's a beauteous thing. Luckily I sprayed it orange before I put it together, but now that it's folded, I can touch it up. Now, it requires that you put a couple of spacers underneath it where it goes to sit it up a little bit, to kind of make it sit nice and even. Now, the kit luggage rack doesn't require that, so like I said, that's good to go. But if you're using that, you may notice that I went ahead and I glued those little spacers down before I got ready to spray the silver paint. And that will just sit on there just like so. And again, that's why I said it was important to mask that, because you will see through it, whereas you won't see through that. I got to figure out what to do for luggage. Since I won't be using the luggage rack, I might need to scratch build a little bit of luggage there or something. It just looks naked without it. If you're not using the Photo-Etch, then you can easily put these around the steps that I have scraped off. That's going to fit without any problem. And the bumpers don't even come in contact with it. Those are the other things that are gone. But now that this is ready to be sprayed bright silver, I need to mask everything that is below this darker silver. I need to mask all that off so that I don't accidentally get anything on that. So that is the last step before. Now I can take this masking from the that I put on the orange and the wheels, or the wheel tub, the drivetrain tub. There is Photo-Etch that goes here and here, but I won't put that on until after I have finished all the rest of the painting. But all of this comes off, and all I need to do is just take some painter's tape at this point and just tape everything off below that. So let me get that done and show you how that looks. Okay, so I just sprayed the, well, I'll continue to spray just to show you. But I've sprayed the chrome silver over top of the templates where there should be gaps in between them so that you'll get the framework painted this nice chrome color. Now I'm being very, hopefully I'm being very careful, but we'll see. There, that's done. Okay, we're going to let that dry because chrome paint, even if it's acrylic, can be twitchy. So I'm going to let it heal for a while. And then when we peel that off, we should have a nice, where the white is, we should have a nice base for the decals, and where the darker gunmetal-ish color, the old oily steel I think that is, but the gunmetal color is, we should just have a nice variation, much like you see on the other Chariot over here. Okay, I've got the templates off. I've got the Bitso masking on. I just put these on here for show for right now. They're not really attached to anything. So let's go ahead and take those off. I'll leave the bubble on. But hopefully you can see this, where the silver is left, and you can see where the white's going. Where the white is where the decals will go. But hopefully you will also see the chrome showing up here against, and you may have to see it in different lights to see how it, there you go. That's probably the best view here, where you can see the chrome showing up against the darker steel. Good morning, welcome. It is Friday. It is the last work day of the week, and if all goes well, it will be the last work day on this Chariot Cyclops conglomeration. As you may know, I've got, as you were with us last time, I've got this much done. I've got the rocks, I've got the base, I've got Mr. Cyclops all done. I've got the Robinsons mostly done. It's always going to be, you could do a little bit better. I was putting the red pinstripes yesterday, and I need to touch the silver up around the pinstripes now so that I can thin those down a bit. And I painted their gray little booties. I've done about as good as I can, I think, with these sculpts as they are. They are not the greatest. So, there's only so much you can do. So this morning, it's all Chariot all the time right now. I'm going to start today with decals. And I'm going to start on this, I guess, the passenger side. The starboard side, if it's a ship. The passenger side, because it is the one that is hidden. So if I screw up any decals, they'll be on the hidden side. So I want to get the methodology down before I move over to the ones that really show. So it's going to be these decals first, and then I'll work my way around to the more visible ones. Now last night I brushed on a bit of the gloss varnish just for the decals are going to be, so that they will have a glossy surface to stick to. I've got the most of the right side done. One thing about decals, if they are done correctly, they give you instant satisfaction. They give you instant pop of color. It's like instant paint job. All of a sudden, this is no longer a mass of gray or metallic silver and an orange, but actually shows some life and some verve, for lack of a better word. Being that this is a solid thing, this isn't a clear canopy, but having this illusion of an interior does give you a lot of snap. One thing I will note, that the back corner decal does not quite fit the area that it's supposed to be in. This is decal number 11, I believe. So I made the mask the same dimensions as the decal, so you're gonna see a little bit fatter of a silver style up here than should be, but that's the way the cookie crumbles on that, I'm afraid. When it comes to the back decal, it's the same as with the front decal. There are two options, and one option is with robot and the other option is without robot, and you can guess which one I'm going to use. I'm going to use the one with robot because I like the robot. It's my favorite part of Lesson Space, so I like the robot. I'm going to put the robot in the back window. I like the idea of what they did here. The execution of it is something to be desired. I like the idea that there's a picture of the robot there. The actual graphic drawing of the robot is lacking, because to me it's just not sitting in there dimensionally correct. If you were trying to indicate where the robot would be, you would more than likely you would see the back of the robot. Now I understand they want to show the front of the robot because the front of the robot is much more attractive than the back, but it would fill up a whole lot more of the picture. I mean, you probably wouldn't even see the bubble. It would be, as the robot sits in the chariot, it's basically disconnected at the torso and put in a squared off box that sits between the two bunks, much like this. This is what the decal should have looked like. You should see a chunk of the robot. You should see, maybe you would see his bubble butt. Not bubble butt. You would see his bubble. However, there was no reason to put his arms out like this. You know, that wouldn't happen. He's right up against the window. You wouldn't see, he wouldn't have room to extend his arms. So there's no reason why they couldn't have just taken that artwork there, or take a picture of what that would look like and use that as the back illustration. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I can see probably why they chose to do that, but I would have liked to have seen an alternate version of that with something a little bit more accurate. All right, I've got the back decal on now. Any problems that I had with this decal, which were none, but I did have a slight fit problem with this decal, and it was completely my fault because I put this framework of tube stock around that window to kind of cover up the gap in the part when I put the part down. So any of that moving the decal around was completely self-inflicted, and you probably won't have that problem unless you do something similar. Again, even that wasn't a problem. I just pushed the decal, flat as possible, and then used a Q-tip to kind of work it up next to, and in some cases underneath, the detail that I put on there. And then once this dries, I think I can go back with a very, very sharp X-Acto and kind of trim that out a little bit. But looking good, looking very good. Alrighty, that is the driver's side decals, and I'm really impressed with how well they're fitting in the areas they're supposed to be. And there's your back, and there's your passenger side. Unless of course you're in the UK, in which, well, no, it doesn't matter, because the driver controls for the Chariot are on the proper side. So yes, that's the passenger side of the Chariot. Now we're down to these last 4 decals, which are the front face decals. And the one I'm choosing to use, since I used the robot in the back, is number 3, which has, if you'll see carefully, it's got the shadow of the robot in the front. So they made some effort to show that the robot is back there. That's a no-brainer. This number 1 that goes across the top is no-brainer. But here's the issue that I found, and I found this when I was making the templates for the white painting masks, or the painting mask for the white. The number 2 and the number 4 decals should be flipped. The area of number 2 doesn't fit the area it's supposed to go into very well. It actually fits much better over here in the area where number 4 needs to go. Now then, because I'm calling this, you know, the front end, the front facing part of the Chariot. This is the money's angle. You want the windshield and this front corner to be your, that's the dominant view. You want that to look the best. So if you've got a decal that doesn't work as well, you can kind of bury it over here, and that's what I'm suggesting that you do. Take number 4 decal and stick it over here. You'll end up, it's a little bit wonky, and you can tell by the thickness of that silver stanchion here. It's a little bit thicker than in the rest of them, and that's because the decal doesn't quite fit. But the white areas now match the decals if you do the flop. So number 2 needs to go over here, number 4 needs to go over here, and of course the ones that go in the center. So I'm going to start with the top center one and then work the other windshield ones into place, and then I'll show you how well the 2 and the 4 fit if you flop. Okay, that is decal number 2 in the number 4 slot, and there's the front 2 windshield and the top decal. I've only got this one last one, that's number 4, to fit kind of oddly in this corner. Well, it was a bit of a fight because it's fiddly work, but I got the Photo-Etch on the Chariot. I'm just doing a little bit of cleanup here now. I've got the Photo-Etch on the Chariot. Normally I'm a fan of Paul's Photo-Etch, and maybe I'm being too critical here. The only thing I don't like about this particular batch of Photo-Etch is the lack of dimensionality. And that's, you know, I don't know how much of a fair criticism that is, but Photo-Etch is, by its nature, it is flat, two-dimensional, unless you fold it. And fold it you will to do this beautiful rack here. Where it falls short a little bit to me is with these steps, or the ladder parts, and the bumpers. You can see the bumpers are on. They look great from the side, but they're all but invisible from the front, and that's because they are, you know, a flat piece of brass. Would it have been nicer if it was a thicker material? I can see where, you know, this is too small to fold up. These details would be too small to fold and make. But as you could tell from the larger Chariot model, even on the larger model, these things are not that wide. So making it even smaller does make, by necessity, make them thinner. It's just that when you are putting them on, and this one I have to paint, I had to touch up paint on all of this, but as you're putting them on, you're really struck with the idea that those are, you know, they look better from the side than they do straight on. They're just, they're very flat, and they're not all that dimensional, and that's, like I said, I don't know how fair of a criticism that is. It probably isn't being fair to them at all, but that's my impression of it. I don't do impressions. My background is in psychology. For those Airplane 2 fans out there. Let's see what else is left. Well, I need to let the CA that I've used to put this Photo-Etch down, I'm gonna let that cure for a bit. I did not use the wider ladder step parts. I did not use the luggage rack. I went ahead and put those on to make sure that they'd worked, but I didn't use them. I used the Photo-Etch parts, which are all now glued down. Okay, I've just been going rounds and rounds in ever decreasing circles around this chariot, touching up details each time, going through and then getting more and more refined. I think that I am finished with it. I think that yon chariot be done. There are some things I don't like about it. There are lots of things I do like about it. But as we've been saying all along, this was never going to be the accurate depiction. I almost said depiction. The accurate depiction of the chariot in this scale. It was never going to be that accurate. So some of it is putting lipstick on a pig. Some of it is, I'm sorry, I'm making a mess here. I'm trying to clean up, but I'm making more of a mess. I like the finishes that I've got. The decals have a gloss over them, but if those were really windows, they would have a gloss over them. So that's why the gloss is there. The mud I've put on the tracks I kind of like. The roughness of it is the roughness of it. It really doesn't get too much better than this. Let me touch a little bit more of this white paint over these lights at the back. You go over the orange. You go over with the silver first, and then you touch the orange around it, and then the white, and then you end up touching the orange again, because you've gotten white on it and all that kind of stuff. So it's like I say, it's an ever decreasing circle. So now what we do here is we take yon Mr. Cyclops, and then we take the chariot and we plunk it where it needs to go. Now the chariot needs to sit. I'm going to move these pesky Robinsons out of the way. The chariot needs to sit such a place where you would imagine the Cyclops has a fairly good chance of bonking it with that boulder. So we're going to sit it right about like that at a jaunty angle. And I'm debating whether or not I want to glue it down or not. Do I want to glue that thing down? I think I do, because it's going to make it easier in the long run, so that if anything happens to it, it won't get beat up. So let's go ahead and get this glued down. I'm going to use what should I use? Some CA. Probably should. I'll just put a little CA underneath the treads. That way, if I really need to pop it off at some future point, I could. So we're just going to put a dot there, 4 dots, and be done with it. Okay, and set that right about like that. There. And now the gravity will pull it down, and it will touch the base and it will glue, but it won't be so much that I can't just pop it off if I need to. Now the Robinsons do need some touching up, and so does Major West here. I want to go one more round on touching these guys before I'm willing to call them done as well. Okay, now I feel that I have got this kit 95-96% done, because I've got all of the Robinsons and Major West and Dr. Smith glued down to the base, and now that they are glued down, I can concern myself with what paint needs to be touched up, because I could spend my whole life trying to paint the eyeballs on Dr. Smith, but if his eyeballs don't end up showing, then that's wasted time, wasted energy, and frankly, wasted nerves that I won't get back. So everything is glued down now. I've got father and son doing their best to fight off the evil Cyclops. I've got Smith cowering behind the chariot. I've got mother and daughter running for the hills. And I've got Major West doing his best while being berated by Judy. I mean, she just has that look on her face. It's like, Dawn, do you know what you're doing? Judy, get out of my way. I'm trying to shoot. Oh, Dawn. Now, I did not use all of Paul's etch because, like I said, I'm not getting any younger, and Photo-Etch can be a game for the young and for the steadier of hand and for the keener of eye that I am. So I did not put like the door handles on the Chariot. Those details were just too small for me to worry about. So now that everybody is happy and down, I can pull out the silver paint and touch up the touch up the red stripes on some of these characters, and take the gray paint and touch up the boots where I've got a little bit of crazy glue. I keep calling it crazy glue, the CA. I got a little bit of the CA splashed up on there, and I can touch that up with the gray paint for the boots. But I'm going to tell you, I am, by and large, I'm ready to break a bottle of carbon tetrachloride over it and call it a done thing. Let me see if I can get this. There you go. Now you can see the whole thing. I like this backdrop. I really do. I don't know how much of it I'm ever going to use, but as far as taking these pictures go, now see we're getting a lot of sunshine coming in from the window that's acting up on that. So let me see if I can close the curtains and turn the light back on. I'll be right back. And there's your finished kit, your finished Cyclops and Chariot. I'm just doing some last minute cleanup here. See if we can zoom in on not just the feet, that's the ugly part, but there you go. There's your Valiant family, Space Family Robinson, and Major West and Dr. Smith fighting off said monster. Oh, that's quite a nice pose there. I think that's where we'll end it. If I can take that picture, that might be my opening shot. And that's where we're going to finish it for this week. Pardon me, that was not a sponsored. My throat was dry. That was not a product endorsement. But that's where we're going to end it for this week. We have finished. It was a 1 week build. It was a quick build. Like you say, it is what you make of it. This is not it's not a perfect kit. I think Paul said it best when he said it was quaint. That was very diplomatic. The Cyclops is one scale, the Chariot's another scale, the figures are a third scale. No, they're not 1/3 scale. They are a third separate scale from the other two things. But it was a fun little build, a little blast from the past from the pilot episode of Lost in Space. And it was a good idea too, or not good idea, it was my idea. It was an idea to make masks for the Chariot, since that's, a crucial part of the paint job of this is getting that Chariot right, and whatever you can do to make it right. I would advise, even if you don't use anything but that luggage rack, to go ahead and get Paul's etch for it, because that luggage rack is just sweet. It's a sweet luggage rack. It's almost too good for the rest of the kit, and that's no knock against the kit. It is a reissue of a well-loved kit from many a year ago, so it's not the same as if it had come out today. If this had come out today with today's technology at their disposal and all of that, I would say, hey, what are you doing? But this is sort of like, to use another example, this is sort of like the K7 space station AMT kit. And you're better off whittling that thing from a block of wood than you are to using that kit and hoping for a realistic result. But you buy it and you rebuild it for the nostalgia factor of it. And the decals and the new figures and the background do add a new element that really makes it worth building. But it's never going to be, like I said, it's not the be-all, end-all Chariot kit. Get that. If you can still find the Mobius Chariot kit, get that if you're hankering to build a Chariot. But I didn't come here to advertise other kits or talk about other kits. I'm talking about this this particular kit. And the Cyclops is a good figure. You be prepared. You're going to sand down some pretty rough seams. You're going to want to get some Bondo in there. Actually, I used Bondo to make rough little patches on there, and rather than trying to sand everything down, I accentuated them and played them up. So that's it. Next week, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I did have to, just as a programming note, I did have to end up asking Steve to send me another Enterprise C, only because I forgot to take really good pictures of the templates for the saucer. So I need to repaint the saucer and that's what's holding up the templates. I'd have had them out by now if I didn't have to go back and repaint this saucer and show the step-by-step. When I was doing it last time, I got so caught up in doing it that I forgot to stop and document each step. So, and I wasn't going to repaint that one since I had all the fiber optics and everything in it. So easier to order another one and paint this one up. So those templates, those C templates will be on their way very soon. The Chariot templates, I'll probably whip up something this weekend instruction-wise, and those will be ready to go out. Next week, I don't know. What is next week's build? I'll have to sit on that this weekend and see what I like and see what tickles my fancy. So until then, till next week when you'll see the result of said ticklage, be good to each other, and we'll see you here next time.